It seems like it's been 40 weeks since you got 40 winks. Your back pain? Unbearable. Tossing, turning, trying to find that pain-free position. And that's the moment you realize you can't spend another waking moment putting off treatment.
The Joint and Spine Center is Cincinnati's leading destination for spine care, with a ton of surgical and non-surgical treatments for back pain. So when a moment has the power to change the rest of your life, go to the one place with the power to change it for the better, the Christ Hospital Health Network. This changes everything.
The Pound This podcast is brought to you by Sway, artfully crafted, ready-to-drink cocktails from Mad Tree Brewing. This is episode 779, Living with Autoimmune Disease, Hormone Imbalance, and Gut Dysfunction with Evie Takacs.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This podcast with Amanda Valentine.
What up, friends? Before I get into this conversation all about autoimmune diseases, which I have, Hashimoto's, which we discuss, and gut dysfunction and hormone imbalances and all that fun stuff, I want to talk to you about someone who can also coach you through those issues and who is also coaching me through those issues, which is Sarah with Team Fit With Me. Sarah is a fantastic health coach, has an amazing team that can help you from your mindset to figuring out your macros to just endless amounts of amazing recipes, whether you want to lose weight or you want to gain strength or you just want to be overall healthier. Sarah is your girl and she can coach you through that. And right now, save 10% off of month one of all packages and plans when you go to teamfitwithme.com/poundthis, and you'll find that link in the show notes. And you can meet Sarah in person at my Pound This party, which is happening Saturday, August 6th at Mad Tree Brewing in Cincinnati. Right now, you can save $20 off of tickets when you use code TCH at checkout. You can also find that link in the show notes, and it's going to be live podcasts all day, including with Sarah from Team Fit With Me, Rochelle Frabotta, who is a sex expert, who we're going to talk about knowing our own bodies and how to make them happy. And also mindset coaching from Lindsay Bonadonna. We're going to have a workout from Trilogy Fitness Systems. It's also my 40th birthday party, so we're going to have birthday snacks from Laura's Healthy Delights. Huge thank you to New Ethics Formulations, where Zeb, who's been on this podcast a million times, he is going to be there as well. Huge thank you to Christ Hospital. Huge thank you to Aaron from Me Active, which your ticket also gets you a free pair of $88 leggings from Me Active. So much good stuff. Please go to the Eventbrite page and see all the info. And please, please, please get your tickets. I would love to see you at this event. It's going to be so much fun. We're going to learn a lot, and then we're going to drink some sways, and we're going to party because it's my birthday. So I will catch you at the Pound This party. And right now, let's get into this conversation. Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This podcast. I am Amanda Valentine. My guest today is Evie Takacs. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great. So I know you're in Cincinnati, and I mean, you do a lot of things, and you're a health coach, and I followed you on Instagram for a long time, but we had not met each other until we were at the Power to Pursue event here in Cincinnati a few weeks ago. And I was excited to like meet. I'm like, oh, I recognize you, and have this conversation about all of the things that you do, because I know a lot of the things that you do in your coaching and that you specialize in are issues that I personally have. So I have a lot of personal questions for you as far as like autoimmune disease and hormones and just overall women's health and being healthy in life. So I'm excited to dive into that. But before I do that, let me know about you, your business, like how did you get into wanting to do health coaching, all of the things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, it was funny because when I saw you at that event, I was like, hey, I know her because I followed you for a long time too. So I was like, wait a second. But yeah, so my name's Evie Takacs. I am a functional medicine practitioner here in Cincinnati. I also work virtually. I got into the health space really out of necessity. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is the autoimmune condition that leads to hypothyroidism right outside of high school. So I was, diagnosed and told, there's nothing else you can really do. This is something that you'll have the rest of your life. Here is medication that you'll take, and we'll see you in 6 months for your next lab visit. And at the time, I thought that sounded kind of weird, but I also was 17. I was starting college. I didn't really think anything more of it, of just, well, I guess, my mom has it, so I guess it's something genetic. And so I just did that. I went that conventional medicine route for 10 years of, taking my medication like a good little girl, going and getting my blood work done. And in those 10 years, things progressively got worse. I was gaining weight. I was experiencing really bad anxiety. I was having bouts of depression, which was very new for me. I was having a lot of gut issues. Like I was oscillating from like constipation to diarrhea. I was having a lot of bloating. Then my hormones were getting, imbalanced or whacked out. And I was told, okay, we'll get on birth control to quote unquote fix your periods. And, now looking back, it's just like, we were just throwing things and hoping something would stick. And so I, decided that I didn't want to live like that anymore. I knew there had to be another way. And so I decided to hire my own holistic health coach. And that just really opened up my world to the different modalities to healing that I wasn't exposed to previously. And so as I started to really trust and lean into, what I have been doing isn't working for me. So why not try this other stuff that feels a little bit more natural in general for humans to be doing? Like, oh, calming the F down. Like, who would have thought that could be helpful? Like all these things that we had talked about and these lifestyle changes I was doing. I felt like this was actually real for me. And this actually was making a lasting change. And I was a classroom teacher at that point. So I was a special ed teacher for 7.5 years. And I was having this quarter life crisis of like, I don't really want to teach in the classroom anymore. Like I'm kind of tired of talking and teaching about the Pythagorean theorem, but like I love interacting with people and I love being in a position where I can empower people. Like I knew I wanted to do that. I'm definitely a people person, but I didn't quite know what to do with that. And so I was talking to my coach and I just was like, every session I was just enamored by the new information, the new things we were doing and the progress I was seeing in my body and in my overall health. And so I thought, well, if I don't want to teach in a classroom, like maybe I can teach about this. And I had also started to kind of share my own personal stuff on my Instagram and just like, hey, look at this poop test I'm doing, or look at this hormone test I'm doing. And like, hey, like I'm getting morning light for something called circadian rhythm. Like I didn't know really what I was doing at the time. I was just doing it and it felt good and it worked. And so people were really interested in that. And I felt like I was pretty good at talking about it. So I thought maybe I could make the switch. And instead of teaching in a classroom, I could actually teach about this. So I thought the first logical step was to at least get certified to do this, because I do have a master's in health education. So I thought, well, I have that, so that's good. So I went and got certified and started coaching after that and really enjoyed it and was still trying to figure out what exactly, what the direction I wanted to go in, because I knew that I felt confident personally that I could only really teach and lead and guide and empower people through something that I had been through myself. And so I knew that something around Hashimoto, something around thyroid, gut, hormones would probably be where I'd end up. So I got my first certification just as a really good entry into coaching, just to get my feet wet. And then as the years have gone by, I've really fallen in love with the hormones, the gut, the thyroid, and the connection between all three and how that really impacts our overall health. And so I went to get certified again. I just finished my certification through functional diagnostic nutrition. So I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, or FDNP for short, which gives me access to functional medicine labs that I can run with clients and use that to help guide their protocols and guide, their own healing. And I do have a clinical advisor that I can consult with on these, which is really nice too. So you get a lot of support with the labs. And these are things that conventional doctors are not typically running or maybe even aware of. And so these are more of the functional, where it's looking at optimal ranges, not just what a big wide range of results would be. So I really enjoy doing that. I do a lot of the hormone testing. We'll do stool testing to look at the microbiome. I've done some food sensitivity tests. I think we can do with or without those for most people. But a lot of testing is available, which is really helpful, again, just to guide and kind of take a look underneath the hood and see what might be going on with the client. Because people know when they don't feel right. They know something's going on. But when you go and you look at your labs and they tell you, oh, everything's right, everything's perfect, nothing's wrong with you, like that can really mess with your head. And so I like being able to take a deeper look with these other labs, and really listening to the client to see, is there any clinical correlation to what's going on and what we see on here? And then being able to guide the protocol in that way just to help support the body. Because I believe that the body is always wanting to heal. The body is always wanting to be in homeostasis. We tend to get in the way with some of the things that we do with our lifestyle choices and dietary choices and things. So my job is to help you kind of get out of your own way and find your way back to what your body is really wanting to do.
Yeah, I will say to that point that if I just ran regular labs, it shows that my thyroid is functional. And so through Sarah, who people know about on this podcast, who is going to be at my Pound This party as well, she gave me a list of other things to ask my primary care for. And so I just charted him and I'm like, can I have blood work run on all of these things? And when we did, he's like, yo, you need to see an endocrinologist. And so I did. And they're like, oh yeah, you for sure have Hashimoto's, which I wouldn't have gotten just from like the normal, just basic panel that they gave you. But I will say that's where I want to ask you about it. I'm like terrible at taking care of it. So the last time I had labs done, they're just like, I haven't gone into hypothyroidism yet. My thyroid's still functional, even though it's being just like attacked nonstop. And my mom has Hashimoto's too. So I asked about that. So pretty much the best advice I was given was stay gluten-free and, chill out, which that's the hardest part for me. I have no chill. And so, I try to stay mostly gluten-free, but at the same time, I'm like, sometimes I need some regular pizza. So it's like, or I just want to slam a beer. So I'm not 100% on that. I do notice a difference definitely within like my own gut health when I eat too much gluten or I eat too much dairy. Like I just feel like a beach ball. And I think that self-awareness is a huge key for that for me, of like, I wasn't really making that connection together before. I would just know that I felt like crap. But now I can realize what foods I'm eating kind of give me that reaction. But other than that, like when you have a client like me, that's like, okay, we've done the blood work, I'm diagnosed, I have Hashimoto's, like that is like, you're never going to get rid of this. Like, how do you manage that? Can you just manage that through just diet alone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. Because I was in that position for a long time too, right? I went gluten-free. I kind of did it when it first was like a thing. Like I did the trendy version of gluten-free and then I stopped for a few years and then I brought it back and I have noticed a difference. Dietary wise, gluten-free, absolutely. And I will say that there is literature to show that wheat can stay in your system for up to a year. So the kind of like weekend warrior version of being gluten-free that I used to be, I'd be gluten-free during the week and then I just, have pizza and pretzels and all these things during the weekend because it was date night and I'm going out with friends, and this, like, that was keeping me in a really hypothyroid state. And so there is literature to show that. So not everyone, some people, right, feel good within 3 to 6 months, but there is that, because I think there's a misconception of like, oh, going gluten-free for like a month, I should totally be better, but it can stay in your system for longer. So I did want to point that out. Gluten-free is big. And the reason for that is I think it helps to understand the why behind that. Because when we eat proteins, there's gliadin and glutenin. So those come in, they create what's called a zonulin response. Zonulin is basically, if you think of your gut lining being really nice and tight, kind of like if you interlock your fingers and there's like no space between them, so really nice and tight gut lining, zonulin will actually tell your gut, hey, like open up a little bit. So your gut lining starts to release a little bit. So you have these spaces for these things like antigens, pathogens to come into your gut lining. And when they do that, they're then going to enter the bloodstream. So what happens then is your bloodstream, they have all these things that shouldn't be in there. So your immune system is like, well, what the heck is going on? We need to go and quote unquote attack. So they're going to go and they're going to search for these things that are causing this reaction in the body. And the issue is that the proteins in wheat look very identical to the tissue of the thyroid gland. So that's why the thyroid gets beat up with wheat. So that's really a big reason. And I like to explain that to people because I think hearing going gluten-free is like, well, why? Right? Like, yeah. I'm someone who I'm going to stick to something when I know the why behind it. So there is like actual reasons to avoid it for that. Just because the thyroid is taking a hit from the start. But dietary, yes, gluten is going to be good. You said calming down. Absolutely. The connection to that is, and what I learned is thyroid is queen, adrenals are king. So thyroid is only going to be as strong as how well we take care of our adrenal glands, which, those are the masters at producing the proper amount of cortisol, which is our stress hormone, which cortisol should fluctuate throughout the day. It's okay to have higher levels of cortisol in the morning, and it should slowly go down throughout the rest of the day. But taking care of your adrenals. So yes, nervous system support. That's something that I really focus in on with clients is really tending to the nervous system, because we tend to live in a sympathetic state most of the day, right? Sympathetic is that fight, flight, or freeze. And we don't get into parasympathetic, which is that rest and digest. So for people with Hashimoto's especially, we have to learn to calm down, and we have to give ourselves the ability to get into parasympathetic. So that might be through breath work. That might be through taking walks outside like you love to do, right? Mm-hmm. Getting outside is a way to activate the parasympathetic. Yes, there are supplements that can help. I think, things like adaptogens, which adaptogens are plants and herbs that help your body adapt to stress. Those can be beneficial when suggested properly and in the right amounts and right timing of day. But it's really about teaching your body that it is safe. It does not need to be on guard. It does not need to be vigilant every second of every day, because that's really what it comes down to for Hashimoto's. I mean, there's a nickname of people with Hashimoto's of it's the disease of doing too much. And
well, that makes total sense for me.
Yeah. You and I, we were just talking about that before we hit record of, we were just talking about how burnout we can feel and how it's so easy to feel that way. And so it really is true that, especially with autoimmunity, it's an immune system condition. It's not so much the thyroid, it's the immune system. And so also in terms of how to support that, where does 70 to 80% of the immune system start from? The gut. So looking at gut health is really important as well. It's really hard to have, balanced hormones, balanced adrenals, balanced thyroid without having a nice stable gut and having your microbiome in balance. So looking at that's really important as well. And there's a lot of information about what to do about the gut. And that's where I like to use the stool test, because we at least get to see what bacteria are you maybe having too much of or too little of, or do you have things like parasites that could be causing an increase in antibodies? There's a lot of information that we get from that to see how your system is responding and how that could be influencing your thyroid. It's really, to me, when we're looking at antibodies for thyroid, you can look at environmental toxins. So looking at things like, what are you exposed to all day long? And we are always exposed to things. Our bodies are inundated with toxins. And that's not to sound like I'm this perfect angel who has all non-toxic things and that, but I do pay attention to it because I know that it's influencing my thyroid antibodies. You want to look at chemical stressors, so things like parasites, pathogens that could be going on, viral infections that you have, and that, again, looking underneath the surface in that way. And then dietary things. Those are the big things that kind of drive the antibodies for thyroid conditions. So working in that, with that perspective, or those, that lens is really important for me. Is it's not just diet. Because unfortunately, I'm not someone who my antibodies go down by going gluten-free, because I have been gluten-free for years and my antibodies are still elevated. So for me, what I've uncovered is that's more of a, I have more of a chemical stressor driver. So things like the things I find in my gut tests, those are what keeps my antibodies up. So it's kind of a long-winded way of saying that there's multiple things, but yeah, day to day, gluten-free can be great. Getting outside, getting into parasympathetic, trying to reduce the toxicity of, products you're using, or, if you're, using different cookware, things like that, those all play a role. It's a lot more complicated than just a checkbox of here, do this, this, and that. But again, there are a lot of things that are in our control that we can implement.
See, I feel like I would be a nightmare client for you. And tell me if you have clients, I'm sure you have, that have been like me, where I'm yeah, I get that and I fully understand it. And I love learning about these things myself. But then I'm yeah, I'm still not going to stop power drinking caffeine. Yeah, I'm still going to drink beer sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm still going to eat pizza and some pasta, because to me, it's it's so hard to choose which way you want your life to suck, where it's oh, my life sucks if I eat these things and I'm in pain and I have these digestive issues. And, I have Hashimoto's sort of flare-ups where I feel it, increases depression and all these other things. So it's life sucks when you do it that way. But I'm also life sucks without pasta. And so I find myself in this, like you just said, weekend warrior. I'd say most of the time, being more vigilant than not, but I don't do 100% because it's like, it's one of those things like picking your suck. And then I feel like that's where I'm like, oh man, like if I'm a client, it's like, yes, I understand these things and I know I feel better when I do them, but I still won't stick to it. I don't know why I'm like this.
Well, so, okay, this is actually real. I'm glad you brought this up. So first of all, it's no judgment from me, like as a coach. It's like, if the client chooses not to do anything or to do something with this information, that's their choice. Like, it's their life. Ultimately, I'm here to provide the information and to support them and to guide them. But if like they choose not to do it, that's their choice, you know, ultimately. So, but I'm glad you brought up the, like, choose your suck, because anything you do is hard. I mean, the fact, like me skipping out on dessert because my family only has a gluten-filled cake for my brother's birthday sucks, right? Like I want that too. It smells so good. Like it looks good, but like, so that sucks. But then it also sucks for me to have extreme brain fog and have really bloated belly. Like that also sucks for me. And that lasts a long time for me. Like I have a hard time. I've been glutened recently and like, I'm still dealing with the repercussions of that, you know, and it sucks. So it's like, for me, again, it's picking your suck. It's choosing what kind of hard you want to have, because nothing is going to be 100% of like, oh, this is totally easy and like no big deal. And then just owning it too. That's the thing, is like owning whatever you choose to do. And I tell clients that, like, if you chose to do that, then that's your choice, and just own that rather than beating yourself up about it. Because sometimes I think that happens too. And the question I ask is, well, what's the alternative? Like if someone's like, well, I don't really want to do that, or I can't commit to that. So then my follow-up is, well, what's the alternative to that? If it's staying the same, then understand that staying the same also has consequences, just like changing has consequences. So it's really just about that honest look at ourselves of what are we willing to do? What are we willing to not do? And ultimately, again, it is your choice, and your coach hopefully is just there to support that and to guide you in the right direction. But you ultimately do get the final say. And you brought up the, like, well, why am I doing this, or whatever, like there's this concept I learned about recently on, so I have a podcast and we were interviewing someone, and she mentioned the concept of secondary gain. And secondary gain is we all have this like subconscious benefit from staying where we are, even though we say we don't want to stay where we are.
Yeah.
And so, like, for example, for chronic illness, like take Hashimoto's, you know, an example of this is, you know, when I was really, really sick before I got my life together and my health together and I started making improvements, I got a lot of sympathy and I got out of a lot of things because I was so sick. And so even though I didn't want to be sick, I didn't want to have brain fog, I didn't want to have digestive issues, I didn't want to have, you know, the brain fog, and I didn't want to have, you know, feeling fatigue and all that. Like I so badly wanted to feel better and get rid of like these thyroid symptoms. Subconsciously, I can look back now and realize that the reason I wasn't doing the things that I know I quote unquote should be doing to get out of that state was because I was gaining sympathy from my family by being sick. You know what I mean? So like, I think we forget that sometimes, that like, again, the body is always looking out. So if the body feels like it's getting something that it needs, AKA sympathy for me at the time, then it's going to stay there. And it's going to be easier for me to not make the choice to like go gluten-free. It's going to be easier for me to skip out on maybe the supplements that, you know, I was told, hey, this might help you. So I just wanted to plug that in there, because I think sometimes we beat ourselves up over things that we're not doing, even though we know we should be doing it. And it's like, well, I think there's a reason that you're not able to do that. And I don't think that we take that deeper look into what it could be.
Yeah. And I think that brings up such a point that I have talked about a billion times on this podcast. I think everything boils down to self-awareness. And it's like, that's where it's like, I know if I eat gluten, it makes me feel like crap. And I'm aware of that now where I haven't been before. So it's like, I think just understanding yourself and having that like hard look in the mirror, because that's a hard thing to do. Be like, oh, I know I'm getting sympathy from this. Like that's a yucky feeling. Like to be like, to own up to that, to be like, that's why I'm doing this, so I can like gain support. But I think that's like, that is such a huge lock that something that you've unlocked, to be like, oh, wow, I am doing it this way. Is this how I want to live my life? And I feel like so much where I talk about just becoming healthier, whether it's weight loss or just moving your body more or just changing your food or changing your mindset, any of those things, I think it all boils down to actually knowing yourself and why do you do what you do, and what do you want to change for the better for yourself? Not because society says, oh, you have to be this size, or this is what movement looks like, and this is what a healthy diet looks like, and this is what mindfulness looks like, of like, what is it that you really want and feels good? Like, it has to start there and do your own version of it. Otherwise, you're not going to stick to anything if you're following somebody else's protocol and not even listening to yourself or your own needs.
Exactly. And that's why, like I said, as a coach, I might, initially write the protocol or give the recommendations, but ultimately the client has say in that as well. Is like, this is your life. Like, if this recommendation that I have for you isn't really a priority for you and we could do without it, then okay, we're going to do without it. Like, I kind of always go in with my ideas of what I think the person would benefit from. But then after talking to them and building it together, it's like, well, okay, if that's not actually a priority for you and this still ultimately leads to you feeling better, then we'll scratch that, right? Like, you need to, and I think that's the hard thing is some people just don't even know what they want, right? Maybe they've never had the chance to even think about it because they've always been told what they want. And so when you ask them, like, what do you want your life to look like? It's like that scene in The Notebook where he's like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And it's like, people don't even know sometimes. So getting very clear on that and being able to take honest looks at yourself, you have to audit yourself of like, am I the one that's getting in my own way? And that can be very uncomfortable and very painful to do. And that can set you into a funk, but it's necessary to actually get to that next level.
Yeah. Because it's like, you're the one that's going to have to save yourself. Like, nobody else is going to be able to do it.
Yeah. No one's going to show up and do the work for you. No one is going to work as hard on your health as you will.
Well, and I think that, kind of separate a point that I wanted to make from that is I think that one of the things that is hard that becomes a barrier, and again, it's like you got to choose your battles and where your head is with this. I think it's like, even for me, working with my own coach, and she's just like, okay, here's all the supplements that you should take. And here, like you said, like even with cookware and what you can have. And I'm like, yeah, yo girl, I am not a Kardashian. You think I can afford all that? Like, that sounds fantastic. In a perfect world, I would also have a personal chef. And yes, I would love to have all this toxin free stuff. And I would love to be on all of the supplements that regulate me. But I'm like, I can't afford that. Like, I'm just, your average chick here. So it's like, how do you move forward with that? Especially like we were having this discussion before we started record too, of like how expensive everything is. And so it's like, I think that's becoming more and more of an issue, at least, I've gotten personal feedback from people about is like, I think already there's been such a stigma of like, I can't eat healthy because it's too expensive. And I think that you can definitely do that on a budget for sure. And I have totally like, there's definitely ways to do that. But I feel like that also, again, having that self-awareness of what you want and what you want to do, or are you going to use that as a barrier of like, I can't eat healthy because things are too expensive, or I can't control my gut or manage my autoimmune disorder because I can't afford all of these supplements and all these other things. So do you just like scrap it, or do you find a way to make it work? I feel like that's a big struggle point for a lot of people.
Exactly. And I think you do a great job at showing how you can still eat healthy, nourishing meals on a budget. Like, you do a really great job at showcasing that, like on your social media. That was like when I first started following you, I was like, man, like this is really helpful. I think people need to see this, because I think people do think that unless you're shopping at Whole Foods, like just what's the point? And that's not true at all. Like, there's plenty of things to be doing, and there's plenty of things that don't cost a lot of money. And I call those free medicine. So there is a lot of free medicine that we just do not take advantage of. And so we were talking about going on walks, right? Walking, getting out in nature, forest bathing, that most likely is going to cost you nothing unless you actually pay to go into a park or whatever, right? And gas money to get there. But I mean, that's being nitpicky at that point. At that point, I'm like, all right, you're just looking for a problem if you're going to bring that up. But yeah, forest bathing, right? Getting outside, getting fresh air. I mean, we wake up in a box, our house, we drive in a box, our car, to another box, our office, and we sit there all day. We're never outside. And there are so many healing properties to being in nature. And we know this. We know that people who spend more time outside are healthier and they have lower levels of inflammation. Like, we know this information. Spending time with loved ones, right? That's going to boost it. That's going to boost your endorphins, right? Get serotonin going, some dopamine, all of those things. Choosing to walk instead of drive, or like there's so many things that we can be doing. Opening up your windows, that's going to freshen your air. That's going to help get rid of some toxins and pollution in your home. Like there are so many things that we can be doing that I think we look to the fancy and kind of sexy and flashy things and think, well, if I can't do that, then I'm not doing any of it. And that's just not real. It's not reality. You have to earn your way to getting to those fancy supplements, in my opinion, right? If you're not doing the foundational things of sleeping better, getting to bed on time, if you aren't getting more movement in outside of the gym, because an hour in the gym one day a week, or, once a day or 5 days a week, like what's movement look like outside? Like if you're not taking care of your stress management, are you journaling? Are you reading? Like, what are you doing for that? Are you hydrating enough? Like, are you eating enough? Like that stuff is foundational. If you're not doing that, then we're not even going to touch on some of these supplements that you think you need to fix you. Cause that's the wrong mindset. Supplements are supplemental, right? They're not there to just fix you, and they're not a magic pill. So I always try and emphasize that with clients as well, as like, we need to nail the foundations. Is let's get some routines and let's get some stress management. Let's get your sleep going well. Let's get you to be nourishing yourself, right? And then we look at that fancy, flashy stuff that people tend to jump to first.
Yeah, I think that I know that I've heard through my entire health journey of just like, I think the image, and I think it's also part of your diet is also who do you follow and who do you listen to and what do you read, of all of those things. If like you're following people and they're showing, just even take away like any sort of hormonal supplements, just like protein powder. And I've gotten tons of feedback over the years of like, what protein powder do I need to be doing? I'm like, drinking protein powder doesn't mean that you're healthy. That's not a healthy choice. It's if you have a hard time hitting the amount of protein you need to hit in your day-to-day intake, then take a supplement to get more protein. Just mixing up a protein shake, and a lot of these protein shakes are just trash anyway, or not really doing anything for you. They're just kind of adding to the problem. Read the ingredient list. You can't pronounce most of it. So it's like it's an addition because you are lacking something. It's clicking something else into place. But drinking a protein shake isn't going to make you lose weight. It's not going to make you gain muscle. It's not going to do anything for you other than supplement your protein. Right. I think it's so easy, and including myself. Like if I took a time machine back 10 years ago or whatever, I would totally think the same exact thing. And it's just one of those things of like digging deeper and getting more knowledge on it, which it's so hard with social media because it's just like everybody and their cousin is a quote unquote expert and they know the right way to do it. And they're also selling all their crap that they want you to buy. So it's just hard to navigate. But just, I think, keeping that in mind, exactly what you said, a supplement is supplementing on top of this healthy lifestyle. Even if you look at like the what's the diet shake that's been around like a billion years? You know what I'm talking about? Slim Fast.
Shakeology?
Slim Fast. Like
Slim
even
Fast,
there where they're like, drink 2 Slim Fasts a day, and then a healthy meal, like do this on top of a healthy diet. Like I'm not in any way saying do Slim Fast, but even that's just like, throw these cans of Slim Fast on top of already like moving your body and making healthy food choices and getting sleep and all that other stuff of like, the Slim Fast ain't going to do it for you. It's all that other stuff.
Right. Exactly. I think there is a lot of unlearning that we've all had to do, right? Like everyone has had some sort of health journey. And I know people who listen to this for sure are doing, have that and have experience with that. But there is a lot of unlearning because there was a lot of things like in the 90s that came out like, fat-free this and salt-free this. And now it's like, well, wait a second. Like salt is a mineral that is super important to our adrenals. So we need that. And also like fat is actually a precursor to making sex hormones. So like, I'm just thinking back to the years that I was on really strict meal plans and I had like 35 grams of fat for the day for like years. And for a woman, like that can be really detrimental. And so it's just, I'm thinking back to all these things that I have to unlearn and really trust that, like maybe there is another way to be doing some of this stuff. And so I try and teach that to my clients too, of like, a lot of us grew up in this time where we were being told a certain thing. And now it's like, we have to unlearn that and really tuning into our body, right? Which is important of like, well, how does my body respond to this? Because every body is different. That's why I can't do like template things of like, everybody gets the same protocol. Like it doesn't work that way. So I'm kind of going like on a tangent, but yes, I think there's some unlearning to do because we tend to kind of get stuck in our ways. And then forget that, hey, the basics are there for a reason. The basics have stuck it out for a long time. I mean, like you were a trainer, like the basic movements are effective because they are basic and you do them, over time, many reps, you're going to get better and stronger and faster. So like trying to switch it up and do all these fancy, flashy things isn't always the answer either. And same thing when it comes to our health, right? Focusing in on sleep, focusing in on stress management, movement, getting outside in nature, hydrating, nourishing yourself. That stuff is always going to be foundational and always trump any sort of fancy supplement regimen that you're going to buy online.
Yeah, and I think the whole unlearning is exactly why me and you do what we do. Is I think that we've had to learn through that ourselves, and it's changed through our own struggles and our own journey. And we're like, okay, now that we've kind of like walked through the fire, continue to walk through the fire. How can our voice help that? So I know that's, as far as health coaching and podcasting, I feel like that's, where I think it's just we have this both desire to like help. How can we kind of combat some of that bad messaging and put some good messaging in there? So with that being said, how can people listen to your multiple podcasts?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. So I have 2 podcasts. The first one is just me. I started it with a friend, but she moved. And so I've taken it over. It is called Health in Motion. It's available anywhere you listen to podcasts. I do have some of the episodes on YouTube as well. But Spotify, Apple Podcasts, again, it's Health in Motion. And the second podcast is fairly recent. We're in season 2. I do this with my wonderful friend, Terea Rodriguez. She is based in California. And we do this in seasons, and each season has a different theme. That podcast is called Wildly Optimized Wellness. And so each one is a weekly release. So hopefully you can check me out there and listen to some of the things that I have to say over there.
So if somebody's interested beyond listening to you and your podcast and they're like, okay, she's really speaking my language, I am curious and having a coach, I kind of want to know more about this, like how can they reach out to you to get some coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is a great place to go and schedule your free discovery session. So I offer free 30-minute consultations to get started, just to start the conversation. And I always tell people, like, if I'm not the right fit for you, then I most likely know someone who would be. So at least get the conversation started so we can get you on your way to what you're looking for. And my website is holisticallyrestored.com. You could also email me, holisticallyrestored@gmail.com. And I'm also on social media, Facebook and Instagram @holisticallyrestored. And I'm pretty active on there and I love talking to people. So feel free to message me or reach out or share, ask questions, things like that. I love interacting with people on there.
Well, Evie, it was awesome chatting with you. I'm glad that we finally got a chance to connect and have a chat, and we'll definitely have to do this again. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
AmandaValentineBites.com